All right. Good morning, guys. Today we're gonna be talking about can love can love be betrayed? Um, this idea is something that I feel needs some conversation, some substance of conversation to be had about can love itself be betrayed? Um, if we look at the sort of general social sphere of our ideas about love, um, most of us would say yes, love can be betrayed. Um, you can betray someone's trust, and so in some, almost in some sense, the betrayal of love is very analogous to the betrayal of trust, if not maybe even almost the same. Um, which would be another interesting discernment to make in our exploration. But so I will lay the ground to say that there is a betrayal. It's not that there is no betrayal. I think that is what is problematic when I say that love cannot be betrayed. And so this is my ironic stance once again, that love cannot be betrayed, but there is a betrayal. The exploration that we have to do is what betrayal is this, and why isn't that love cannot be betrayed? And so my second ground for this idea is that betrayal can only exist within the idealization of love. It means that when a person is betrayed, it's the idealization of whatever that love is, that's what was betrayed. Um, and the next question that makes it more difficult is it possible? Is it possible to love without some type of idealization, some type of fantasy? Um, as I currently understand it, the only answer I have to this question is that it's a process. It's not like a one time and done thing, like, oh, yes, I've gotten rid of my idealizations of love and I'm so free, and so on and so on and so on. No, I think the enemy, or if I were to use Badou's, because Badou actually makes a very critical distinction. He says love has no enemies. And this will be actually a very important thing to tie in. Badu says love has no enemies, but politics needs an enemy. That this is in his book In the Praise of Love. So if we just use that logic that love has no enemies, betrayal in some sense is predicated on an idea about an enemy, that you've you are intending towards betrayal. You are making them an enemy. You could say betrayal is a sort of like inside enemy, that they earn your trust, so on and so on, and then betrayal. But that doesn't seem to adequately describe love as such. It seems what occurs, even though there is a betrayal, the betrayal and the enemy is the very idealization of love itself. What what is the source of the perpetual idealization of love? That is the other question that we have to um, look into. What is the source of these idealizations? Now, I'm not going to approach this from a Lacanian perspective or anything else. I know that I've engaged with them, and I know that I've engaged with some of Badu's, but in this case, I am relatively um, not attached to anything in particular when I say these things. So, what perpetuates the idealization? The what For me, what perpetuates the idealization is that it's this idea that love belongs to the one that is to the one that believes in it. And I think this is what is our most heartbreaking moments uh, in our own phenomenological experience of falling in love or dating or so on and etc. It's this idea that we have perpetuated some type of idealization of love, um, and then what has occurred is that, and it's because that has occurred, that you believe love belongs to you in some ways. The belonging is captivated by the idea that you idealize about how love is structured, how love is supposed to be, how love is yada, 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 yada. But for me, and this is probably the most, um, this is something that we have to ask ourselves. Um, does love have content? Because I believe love must be something without content. Like, it has to be something without content. Because if it had content, then we would fall into the trap and we would have to assert, in my idea, we would have to assert then how is love supposed to be? To me, because love has no content, we almost cannot say what love is supposed to be, and so on and so on. All we know when we talk about love as such is that we know that whatever this idealization of love that I experienced was not good. But in my opinion, we perpetually fall into another form of idealization of love. And I think this is what makes it problematic. How do you encounter uh and then so the next question is, how do we encounter what we would call real love? Because this is the fascination with everybody that talks about love. How do I know when it is real? Real as such. I am with Badu in the sense that we can only give something general, so general that it still kind of has something without content. Um, what does that mean? It means that, for example, the way Badu describes love, one is that you're relatively helpless in the chance encounter of love, right? So when Badu asserts this idea, he's asserting the idea that you can't control, so to speak, who you fall in love with. It's sort of like a chance encounter that it happens. But then there's a specific point where you can commit, you can make the chance itself a choice and commit and construct something together. So this is Badu's kind of like understanding. And you construct something together through difference. Um, when Badu talks about difference, I typically associate it with phenomenological difference. I don't think he's asserting some type of Derrida difference, Hegelian difference, anything like that. I think he's just strictly talking about some type of phenomenological difference, meaning that there's a you and there's a me, and we are in love trying to see the world through two. So this is, if we were just to give a very generic answer, which I still believe would be adequate, is that when Badiou talks about difference, he's talking about seeing life through two rather than one. So why does idealization fail in the face of love? Because love negates or tries to always do violence to the idealization that we have. But for me, real love must be something that is um, outside the two. What do I mean by outside the two? It means that for me, it's inevitable that the two, whether it be, the couple, they both have some form of idealization about love. To me, this is inevitable. But real love is when it sort of does this process of negativity between the two idealizations of love, between the two competing idealizations of love. And for me, this is when you start to see and construct the world through difference, through two, like Badiou likes to talk about. So yes, I am essentially saying that the idealization of love is going to happen. I think that's why there is tension between relationships. It's because we have some type of form, idea about the way love should be. And it seems inevitable that we have this idealization. Like and then I will preface this. I think most of us, when we talk about love as such, um, what we understand about love is that we understand the failures of the idealizations of certain kinds of love. So it means when people say, oh no, true love is this, 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 and this, what I hear is that I encountered a form of an idealization of love that doesn't work. And so I think real love is this way. But for me, the trap is that actually, when the person says real love is like this, to me, they just found a better idealization of love. Like this is what I feel like is happening. Now, I didn't think about this, but what might be useful is this idea of sublimation, that actually the Hegelian, maybe even the Hegelian notion would be this, that we cannot start a love without content. So that means that it's inevitable that we start a love with some type of idealization. And that through the negativity of the two, or between the two, right, between my idealized form of love and the other's idealization of love, that we together, if we continue the process and we are committed, we sublimate our notions about love. And it's a continuous process. My hope, actually, with the continued process of the sublimation of the idealization of love is that is that you would come to realize that love itself has no content, but it is really, I think, in my opinion, the pure acceptance of this difference. Like, it's the pure acceptance of come as you are and you come as you are. But this is what's problematic about come as you are. What's problematic about come as you are is that we assume a kind of static as you are. We assume a sort of idealization of what the other is and then what I am. And so this is why I say that love must be something without content and then also does not belong to either of the two. What belongs to the two that are in love or dating, is their own idealizations of love. But it does not mean that love is not there, so to speak. Love is included, but I would say love is the sort of subtractive element of our idealizations about love. That when we realize that we can't just um, completely, take control and tell the other how to behave or anything like that, um, or that we have to make some type of sacrifices, some type of compensation for now being in a world of two and not one. Um, these are the sort of glimmers of, you could say, like love that is included but not does not belong to either one of us. And so I find Badu's distinction between belonging and inclusive very helpful, because what it kind of reveals is that what perpetuates our idealization of love is this idea that love belongs to the two of us, or that love belongs to us. But love is included, so to speak. It does not belong to anyone. And then so let's now that we have basically premised this part, how and so in this sense, love cannot be betrayed. This is the whole point, right? Because it's inevitable that we come in with some type of idealization about love, and that through the two, we sublimate each other's idealizations. We try to. That's the attempt, I would say. The attempt is, no, you don't know what love is. Because I think love without content is exactly this epistemological process, that love is always going to say, no, you don't know what it is. But you can feel it, you can sense it in some fashion. But it's not the glamorization of it either, because even the glamorization of the encounter, like an encounter where you fall in love, this is the part that people glamorize, like Badu says. But for Badu, love is the whole like construction of it. It's from the encounter and then constructing the world through this too. So in some sense, there is a kind of Hegelian idea behind what Badu is saying. Like, it's not just this, oh, I had this experience, it's a mystical kind of union. I think sometimes when we fascinate about the encounter, there is something mystical about that kind of, there's something about the feelings that are analogously mystical about it. But the biggest critique about mysticism is that you have to return home. You have to come back to earth again, and sort of deal with that. And so, because love does not belong to any one of us, betrayal assumes that something belongs. So betrayal needs some type of idea that it belongs, right? Like, betrayal is predicated on this idea that I've earned your trust and I'm now planning to betray you, right? Whether it be last second or I have already planned it from the beginning. Betrayal is predicated on this idea that eventually I am included, but now I'm going to betray you. But because love does not belong to either the two of us, it cannot be betrayed in any real sense. The only thing that is betrayed is the very idea that we both hold about love. So what I'm saying is that you can betray a person. That is true. You can betray them. You can betray your partner. You can betray their trust. You can betray all these type of things. But the question is not that can another person betray another person. They can. But can love itself be betrayed? This is what I am challenging. Because typically when people talk about these things, they say, yes, love can be betrayed. I experienced it, so on and so on. But we have to keep in mind that when I had my previous assumption is that love is without content. This is what makes it difficult. But for me, love has to have this kind of radical negativity to it in order for things to present themselves as they are. If it doesn't, then now we fall into the trap of, okay, so then how is love supposed to actually be? And the moment you say that, we fall into the trap of some type of idealization about how love is supposed to be. What I'm always going to say is love is, in some sense, this is where radical or negative theology kind of helps us, is that love is that and also not that. So love has to be this kind of just radical, absolute negativity in some ways, because the only way that you can construct a world of two through difference, in my opinion, if we're sticking with Badiou's logic, is that it amounts to a lot of subtracting, because what ends up happening is that I come in with my full identity, the other comes in with their full identity. And if we don't subtract our identity from this construction, then we will not survive. Essentially, love will die, right? At least this is the phenomenological experience, that love will die. If even one cannot give up or surrender some part of their identity, this is problematic, right? And in fact, the whole worry about abuse and manipulation is actually predicated on this idea. It's predicated on eradicating difference. Like, abuse is the utmost control about difference. Like, abuse hates difference. That's why abuse exists. It does not like difference, because what it threatens for the abuser is the very idea that there is an other, so to speak. That's what's problematic about it. And it's also another problem of calculation, that we try to calculate love to the most extreme. To me, the abuser is probably the supreme controller and calculator of love, right? You should behave this way because it's like this. Don't do this, etc., 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 etc. But you see how love becomes law all of a sudden. This is the fracturing of how we understand love itself, that the idealizations of love perpetuate some kind of law within our mind. No, love should be like this, this. But then if we were to play on the Christian sentiment, why does love fulfill the law? This will always be a fascinating topic for me. Why does love fulfill the law? Because everything that we demand within the idealization of love as law can only be fulfilled, ironically, by real love. But that love cannot belong to us, because if we believe it belongs to us, then it's simply just another form and idealization of that love that has become law. And so, for me, the notion that there is real love is the fact that there is constantly a sublimation of our idealizations about love, which coincides with the idea that we are constructing a world as two rather than one. And so love itself becomes this just radical negativity, that we are constantly surpassing and going past the limits of our previous forms of idealizations about love. And so, as long as we do that, as long as there is some type of sublimation between the two of us about our idealizations about love, for me, then this is the crazy part. Then there is, you could say, real love. That real love has shown itself in some type of fashion. That the sublimation has occurred. That you have changed your ideas, conceptions about how you should love and live with this other human being. And the crazy part is that perpetually you're going to be thrown into that negativity of how do I deal with this? How do I, and so on. And for me, a lot of the tension resides in the fact that the both of us hold some type of idealization about love. And that's why I continue to assert that love has no content, because if I assert that love has some content, then I'm telling you there is some ultimate form of idealization about love, because that's the consequence of what I'm saying, essentially. So for me, love has to be this radical negativity in some ways, because how else can we explain what shatters our idealizations of love into more elevated forms of it, or different forms of it? And so this is in fact very Hegelian, obviously, but for me, I find it truly the only best way to explain how we can even begin to think the idea of why is it that it is almost impossible to not have some type of idealization about love. And that's why I feel like not only does love have no content, but love multiplies. And this is symbolically held in the idea of fascination of having children, and so on. But it also makes sense in the idea that why is it that everybody believes they know, that they why do they know what they're talking about with love? Like, everybody has so many different conceptions, perceptions, philosophies about how love is, how love should be. Um, for me, the only thing that actually makes sense to understand this multiplicity as such is, one, that love has no content, and two, either that I stick with Badiou, that Badiou, in the sense that love is a sort of pure multiplicity. And so the Hegelian notion would be trying to reach a pure multiplicity, in a somewhat weird way, right? This is where Badiou and Hegel probably gets very interesting, but I don't know too much. I don't know too much to either combine the two and think them through. I would say, ironically, I probably feel more comfortable with Badiou than Hegel at this point to even attempt to explain. So if we go back to the original question, can love be betrayed? It is hard to betray something, one, without content. Betrayal assumes some kind of content to be betrayed. I am betraying who? And so in that sense, love is kind of like, yes, love is there, embodied or captured in the who, but it's not the totality of the who, right? The who that is being betrayed. And so this is why I will continue to say that really the only betrayal that occurs is that my own idealization of love has been betrayed, right? That you've betrayed me, and that the other who has done the betrayal has also betrayed themselves. Um, they have betrayed themselves because now they have disrupted, in some sense, the process of sublimation to overcome some type of idealization of love. You could say the real betrayal is the insistence, the utter insistence of some type of idea about love that ends up negating the other. Um, in that sense, that is the real betrayal. But can love itself be betrayed? No, that's that's like the fundamental idea. It's the idealization that is betraying you and betraying the other. It's only when that real love per se overcomes that, does a kind of sublimation process, that real love exists. But what is so tricky about this idea of sublimation between the both of our ideas about the about the idealizations of love is that we think this is the trap, that in some ways it affirms our idealization about this love. We say, oh yes, this is, um, but it's always a yes and no, like yes but no. Because if you were to stop, and say yes, okay, this is love, this is how we should keep it, and so on, um, this is the better form of it, you would be betraying. You would eventually, once again, do a kind of betrayal, not only to the other, but to yourself. And a lot of that betrayal is predicated on the idea that, one, not only do we change over time, but also our idealizations change. So this is why they're always going to be in tension with each other, because some of us as individuals, sometimes we like to be nostalgic and perpetuate a old form of idealization and say, oh yes, that was good, now we're like in this spot, doesn't make any sense, why don't we just go back to this way of being? No, you're in a new element of tension, and so you have to overcome that in some ways. But even overcoming that can look like failure too. The idea that love dies is a very interesting fascination for me, because in some sense, phenomenologically speaking, we understand what we mean by love dying, that there is no longer this thing between us, that we just no longer have it. We no longer have the willpower to persist and participate as two. And so in some sense, when we say love dies, they're not lying, that love has died. But why does love die, so to speak? Or why does love die for us? This is the Christian element that I've been waiting to put in. It's as if love dies for this reason, that your idealizations about love have come to an impasse. And so love must die. That actually the two that has been constructed thus far can no longer continue to sublimate. And so the ultimate sublimation is that love must die to take another form, to take a resurrection, for you to encounter another person, right? But even in this idea that love has died, it sublimates, it presents the possibility of sublimating your idealization about love because of that impasse, because love has died, so to speak. But it looks like my laptop's about to die, so I will stop there. I think that was plenty enough said to digest and think about. But all right, you guys take care.